Hello everyone, welcome to Marlin Chess Kids. Today I show the game played by Gabriel, John and Sebastien Chua. And this beautiful game complete in just 30 moves. And let's see how the game play. The game starts with the pawn to d4, and here the black play f5, and this typically represents the Dutch defense. And the game continue with c4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, bishop to f4, bishop to g7. After this, the knight developed to knight f3, and the black go for a short castling. And this is the first 5 move, and you can see that the black has very fast develop and castling and get the king off the center of the square. And you can see that this black king has been fully developed with a very nice structure and very self-defensive in this opening. So the game continue with the white play e3. After this, d6 was played, and now h3 from the white, then c6 from the black, and the white play bishop to e2, and this the white can just go for a short castling. So after this move, the knight to e4, gaining the control of the center square. And after this, queen to c2 was played, and also the white have the idea to castling the queen side as well as the king side. After this move, queen c7 was played, and now the white just captured the knight at the center, and after this the pawn just captured it back. Back to this position, another suggestion that the white can play in this position is to play a c5, and this will be a strong move for the white, because if the black capture the knight, and now the pawn can just capture, and you have the formation of the very nice structure of the pawn in the center, and this all black pawn will be blocking the black bishop, as much of the space will be limited by the pawn. And if you capture the pawn here, then the white can attack the queen and will be winning. Therefore, the pawn cannot capture the pawn at c5. So the white can just go for a check, then continue to capture the queen as well. Therefore, at this position, this bishop also pinning the pawn, and the pawn cannot capture the c5 pawn. So back to this position. After this move, the knight just captured the knight, and then the pawn captured. After this, the knight goes to g5 and attacking the pawn, and with the knight and the queen as well. Another suggestion that can play if you use the queen to capture, and here the black will be winning, because now the bishop will become active and attack the queen and all this diagonal, and the pawn is attacking all the square that the queen can move. So for example, after bishop attack, now if the white capture the pawn and attack the queen, then the queen can just go for a check, and after this check, now the white has a single move and a triple attack at this position, and one of the pieces will be capture. So if you use the pawn to defend, such as b4, then the queen can goes to a3, and again at this position the pawn is attacking the bishop is attacking the queen, and the queen able to go to c3 and check the king and win the rook. So after this move, if you use the queen to capture the pawn, then the queen will go to c3 and check the king and win the rook. And after any move from the white, the queen will be able to capture the rook at a1. So for example, if you move the king to f1, then the queen will just capture a1 and check the king again. And if you defend with the knight, now you can just continue to develop the knight to d7. And at this position, the black is winning a rook and is clearly winning the game. So this pawn in the center cannot be captured, and it is a poison pawn. Therefore, after this move, the knight to g5 was played, and after this, the queen to a5 and check the king. Then the queen to d2 to go for the queen exchange, and this the queen just capture and the king capture. And after the king capture, the white now cannot go for a castling. And after this move, d5 was played. Then the white continued to play h4, and after this move, knight a6 was played, and after this, a3 from the white, and here the bishop takes d4, a very nice sacrifice again. So this sacrifice, if you use the pawn to capture, then the rook will just capture the bishop, and at this move the black is winning one pawn. So if you use the pawn to capture, the pawn will capture it back, and if the king move out, then the rook will just back to f8. And back to this position. After this move, the white play rook a to b1 to protect the pawn, and here the bishop back to g7. After this move, h5 was played, trying to attack the pawn and also can push up to attack the bishop. And here the black play h6, and with this the knight just moved back to h3, and now the black pushed g5 trying to attack the bishop, and the bishop back to g3. After this, the knight continue to move forward and develop towards the center to the knight c5, and here the white just play a b4 trying to attack the knight. And after this, the knight goes to d3, and this is another great move from the black, because now the black has many ideas to play to control the center as well. It also can have the idea to capture the knight, then you can just capture the pawn, and the rook will be captured back after the bishop capture, and will be winning a pawn again. So after this move, the bishop just capture the knight, and here after this the pawn capture, and this position, this again is a poison pawn again, and the king cannot take the pawn. And if you take the pawn, then the pawn can just capture and check the king, and if you capture with the king, now the bishop to e6, and you have a double diagonal attack. And so the place will be limited to these two places, and let's we choose if the king move up, then it will be mate by 4. For example, now the rook can continue to check by playing rook to f5 and check the king, and you can see most of the space will be controlled by the black. So after this check, the only way to defend is to block the check, and you see the king cannot move. So the only way to block this is to use the bishop, and now the rook will continue to capture and check the king, and again only one place for the king to move, that is king to d4. And after this move, now you can bring another rook to d8 and attack the king. And after this check, the king only has one place to move, that is king c3. And finally, you have a very nice move by playing rook to c5, and this is a open double check, and also the bishop control all the square, and the rook also control the square, and the rook is control another square. So at this, you can see the king is being trapped in the middle of the game and being checkmated in the middle of the game. So therefore, if after the block, if the king move back to d3, then you will bring another rook to check, rook a to d8 and check, and again you have a very strong diagonal bishop attack. So here you have the option of moving to place either king to c2 or king to e2, and let's if you move the king to c2, then the bishop will continue to check, and a very strong diagonal check, and will be winning the rook. So if you move any king move such as king to c1, then the bishop can just capture the rook and will be winning in the exchange. So after this move, the pawn cannot be captured and is a poison pawn, and in the actual game, the pawn c takes d5. After that, the pawn will capture it back, then f3 was played, and after this move, bishop to f5, protecting the pawn at d3 and maintaining the diagonal attack towards the rook. And after this move, the knight to f2 was played, and now rook a to c8, bringing up the rook, and you have the action to check the king as well. Then the game continues with rook h to c1, preparing to go for a rook exchange, and the black do not want to exchange and instead move to rook c2 to go for the check. And with this, after rook capture, now the pawn is capturing back and bring forward and attacking the rook as well, and this pawn is protected by the bishop. Then after this move, rook b3 was played, and this is another tactical blunder, and which causes white to be clearly winning in the game. After this move, now the black bring the rook to c8, and now pushing the pawn forwards will be promoted to a queen. And in the actual game, the king moved to c1 to block the pawn forwards, and after this move come a very interesting idea by playing a bishop to a1. So this pawn push to a1, you have the idea to push the pawn from d5 to e4, then the bishop can go back to e6 and attack the rook, and will be winning the rook. So let's, after this move and back to this position, if you make an example move such as play the move such as a5, and if the pawn capture, then you can just bring the bishop to c3. And now if you capture the pawn, then you have a bishop to d2 check the king, and this check will force the king to capture. And if the king capture, then the pawn can promote a queen, and after a queen the king have to move to king e2, and with this you have the rook to c2 checkmate. And another suggestion, if the bishop goes to c3, then if you play the example move such as bishop h2, and the bishop can just go to d2 and check the king. And if the king do not capture the bishop, instead moving the king to b2, then the pawn can promote, become a queen and check the king. And now the king has to move to a2, then you can just continue to play bishop to c3, and the queen can go to a1 and checkmate the king protected by the bishop. And if the rook capture, then the queen can go to b1, and you have a very nice checkmate with the queen. So after this move, bishop a1 was played, and here after this the white play b5, and after this move the bishop back to ec3 again, to have the idea to check from the d2. Then after this move the knight move to g4, and with this move the black is winning and mate in 4. I give a couple of seconds to figure out how the continuation of the black to play and mate in 4. Well, congratulations for those who found the answer, and for those who like to enjoy the show, here are the moves. In the actual game, after this move, the black play bishop to d2 and check the king, and with this move at move 30, the white resign the game. And if you want to continue the game, if the king move to b2, then the pawn can promote a queen and check the king, and the king goes to a2, then you can bring the rook to continue check, and after rook block, then you have a rook capture the rook, and it will be a checkmate. And with this, thank you.